Tonight, Victoria's road toll trauma.
I'm Ben Knight, and tonight on the eve of the Road Safety Summit, we're going to take a closer look at what is going wrong, the stories behind the statistics and the lives left shattered.
So it's the thing that people don't see, the effect on the families for years and years and years after something so catastrophic happens.
Also tonight, a win for workers, a pay rise for more than 2 million Australians on the minimum wage. And why a pig virus in China has got our pork producers so worried. Good evening, Tamara O'Dine with ABC News. The state government has called experts together for a summit tomorrow to address the crisis on Victoria's roads. In January, we were celebrating the lowest death toll on record, but since then, the number of lives lost stands at 137, 49 more than at the same time last year. For a closer look at the issue, Ben Knight joins us now from Richmond. So, Ben, a familiar scene behind you there?
Well, yes, it is, Tam, and of course, especially here in Victoria, which has for so long been one of the world leaders in introducing the kinds of road safety measures that have been so effective in bringing down the road toll. And that includes, of course, things like random drug testing, which you're seeing going on here behind me tonight. But of course, this year, something has gone horribly wrong, and now we have a summit to try to work out what. But even in the 3 weeks since that summit was announced, the carnage has continued, and at pretty much the same rate. In the last 4 days in Victoria, 5 people have been killed. And we also know that for every 1 person killed on the roads, there'll be another 4 who suffer life-changing injuries. The Transport Accident Commission spends between $1 and $2 billion a year rehabilitating those people, putting bodies and lives back together. And then, of course, there's the emotional toll, and that can't be calculated. And that's where we begin tonight with this report from Mary Guerin.
Chris Latimer tells her story over and over to schools, companies, on this day a prison. When she spreads the message of road safety, people listen.
They just can't believe that someone has suffered so much trauma and still manages to get up in the morning.
I can't live in the wreckage. I've got to make some sort of purpose.
Wendy and Melissa, the 2 eldest of Chris's 4 kids, at 17 and 16, were killed when the driver, Wendy's boyfriend, clipped a car.
Here are 2 families that are just broken.
10 years later, her son Grant was severely injured and traumatised in a crash that killed the driver, his best mate, who'd been drinking. Incredibly, unthinkably, there was more tragedy to come.
And I thought, can't happen again. Just can't happen again.
Her daughter Nikki suffered catastrophic head injuries when her boyfriend at the wheel clipped a sign at a roundabout. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Chris became a full-time carer alongside a dozen others and started raising Nikki's son, Blake. Nikki died 3 years ago.
He's an 8-year-old autistic child, and he said to me, "You're meant to die before my mum." And he's right. This was done for Nicole, and these are for Wendy and Melissa.
The tattoos on Chris Latimer's arms are an indelible reminder of her lost children. The collective trauma has hit far, wide and deep. Chris's son and stepchildren say they don't want to have kids of their own.
They couldn't go through life losing a child, and they couldn't go through life even driving a car. My stepdaughter won't get a licence. And that's the thing that happens. That's the thing that people don't see, the effect on the families for years and years and years after something so catastrophic happens.
It's called the ripple effect.
If one person's seriously injured or killed in a road crash, it affects their families, it affects their workplaces, their communities. But not only that, it affects the people on the road who may have witnessed it.
Gemma, you're on tools when we get there.
Natalie Stanway has seen hundreds of accidents in more than 10 years with the SES.
If you walk away from going to road crashes and say that you're not affected by it, to some extent, perhaps you're deluding yourself.
Some rescues are never forgotten. Even one little boy who wasn't seriously injured.
And he just said to me, I want to know whether I'm going to stay alive. It turned out that they were on the way back from a family funeral, and because he was in a crash, he thought he was going to die. He really pulled at my heartstrings, that boy.
For Chris and innumerable others, this year's road toll spike will spark memories no one should have.
It's devastating. This is gut-wrenching. You know, I don't know. We need to do more.
Mary Gearan reporting. So what is going wrong? Well, of course, there's no single or simple definitive answer, but there are some figures that really do jump out at you. For example, we know the vast majority of people die on country roads and that most of those are country people who travel those roads all the time. But there are some other clues in these statistics as well, and some of those, quite simply, beggar belief. For more than 25 years, Sergeant Stuart Gale has been policing this deadly stretch of road west of Ballarat. The most common type of crash is a single vehicle leaving the road and hitting one of these trees.
They're hitting fixed objects and those objects don't move. The blunt force trauma on the human body is enormous at 100 kilometres an hour.
In 10 years, this 20-kilometre stretch has claimed 4 lives and seen 12 serious injury collisions. But nothing prepared police for the carnage of this year.
Currently we're sitting at 14 fatalities within Western Region Division 3. We get very frustrated at the public, at driver behaviour. The toll it takes on our people is enormous.
Stuart Gale is as mystified as anyone, because the spike is across the board. More men, more women, more drivers, more passengers, more motorbike riders, more cyclists and more pedestrians. And incredibly, 20 of the people killed this year weren't wearing seatbelts.
It's beyond belief. We're all partners, husbands, brothers, we're all part of a family, but to get in a car and not put a seatbelt on is absolutely rank negligence.
Older cars are also more likely to be involved, but newer doesn't always mean safer. The TAC chief says he's sick of reading police reports of crashes involving Great Wall utilities imported from China, with a safety rating of just 2 stars, the lowest of any new vehicle on Australian roads.
Who crashes those is hard-working young tradies that go into the tree and often then have a lifelong acquired brain injury. So that makes you feel very sad and very angry, actually, that in this day and age in Australia that we're allowed to import products such as that.
Then there's the great unknown of mobile phones. In 2016, according to police reports, they featured in 5% of fatalities. But it's likely to be much higher, because unlike alcohol, drugs or speeding, it's difficult to confirm if a phone was involved in a crash unless it was halfway through a call or an unsent text. And of course, there's population growth as well. Every day, Vic Roads licenses 600 new drivers. That's thousands of new drivers hitting Victorian roads every week and making their choices about how they'll conduct themselves.
We're trying to influence the public to take care on the roads and do the right thing, and the message just does not seem to be driving through at all.
Well, of course, what makes it also mystifying is that Victoria has for so long been so successful in bringing down the road toll, so much so that in 2016 the state government announced a strategy called Towards Zero, with the explicit aim of eliminating road trauma in Victoria. Well, it might seem like hubris now, of course, it's headed in the opposite direction, but I can tell you that there are well-informed people who still genuinely believe that a zero road toll is possible. So the question is, what are the next steps in order to get there? And Cameron Best has been taking a look.
A weekday morning and police are out in force, testing drivers for drugs and alcohol. It's a clear message that there's never a safe time to drive under the influence.
It's quite alarming how many drug offenders that we seem to be getting nowadays.
Being stopped by the booze bus might be an inconvenience, but it is working. After 1,034 road deaths in 1969, Victoria led the way in introducing compulsory seatbelts, random breath testing, red light cameras, booze buses, speed cameras and drug testing, cutting the road toll by more than 80% while the state's population trebled. The final push to zero could prove the hardest.
The people in our community who have disregard for their own safety and for the safety of others is a very small minority, and so we need to particularly target that group.
Researchers are working on early detection of signs of fatigue or distraction in drivers.
And people are extremely poor judges of their own level of drowsiness until it's too late.
They're monitoring the eye movements of sleep-deprived truck drivers.
So we've only got about 5 more minutes to go.
The driver sensing technology could find its way into all new vehicles.
And it will inform the driver when they are drowsy or they are distracted and to get their eyes back on the road or to take corrective action.
One day we may not need drivers at all. This driverless shuttle bus can detect and also interact with its environment.
Didn't quite see the vehicle and the vehicle's gone and sensed her.
The benefit of vehicle technology like this is really to ensure that when people make mistakes, because we all make mistakes, we're all human, that doesn't result in a death or a serious injury.
Driverless technology may still be a way off, but there is some serious tech in today's cars. This car has autonomous emergency braking if it senses a possible collision. There's lane departure warning and steering assist. But there's another piece of technology which is putting your life at risk.
If we make a commitment, conscious effort to not use our mobile phones and tell people not to use their mobile phones, that can make a really big difference.
There's already a $480 fine and 4 demerit points for using your phone while driving, and the government is funding detection cameras. Vic Roads is also rolling out thousands of kilometres of wire barriers and rumble strips. Getting people to slow down could prove another key measure.
There would be a profound reduction number of people killed and seriously injured by reducing speed limits.
Cheers, mate. Have a good day. All is up for consideration to make the roads as safe as possible.
Ben, there are so many factors involved here. What's tomorrow's summit hoping to achieve?
Well, obviously it's going to be trying to look at what will be those next steps. You can expect there'll be a strong focus on regional roads, as you would expect, but I think you're also going to see some things put on the table that the people behind them acknowledge will not be popular. Things like reducing, for example, the limit of alcohol you can have in your blood, things like reducing the speed limits on some of those country roads. And of course, there's going to be another big focus on that emerging issue of distracted drivers. And in fact, the work on that is already being done. The Transport Accident Commission is about to launch its next campaign, and that will be the issue it's focusing on. And in fact, you can get your first look at that on News Breakfast tomorrow morning.
Ben Knight, thank you.